So good evening, everyone. My name is Moshe Unger, and I'm presenting on behalf of Vilma Todri and Panos Adamopoulos, associate professors from Emory University. And as been said, unfortunately, they could not travel to the conference. So this paper really examines how collaborative filtering recommendations are more persuasive in practice, focusing on how a community's local social connectedness shapes consumer responses in an online to offline restaurant app. So the motivation for this task or this work is that collaborative filtering is inherently social. The reason for this is that it aggregates people's choices to inform recommendations, especially in local online to offline settings where dining decisions are tied to neighborhoods and communities. The social fabric may meaningfully affect how persuasive those recommendations are. The key idea is that community context could either crowd out algorithmic advice if people rely more on word to mouth, or amplify it if recommendations feel aligned like people like them. So more specifically, the central question of this research is whether local social connectedness strengthens or weakens the demand impact of collaborative filtering recommendations. So conceptually, there are two plausible forces at play. On the one hand, in more connected communities, word of mouth could substitute for collaborative filtering and dampen its effect. On the other hand, drawing from social theory, stronger social identity and in-group identification could also make CF more persuasive because it reflects the preference of similar others. So here they study a large US mobile online to offline platform that recommends restaurants to users across major cities. The data link nightly recommendations lists to subsequent offline visits, so the outcome is actual foot traffic instead of clicks alone. In particular, the dataset includes all the restaurants in the mobile urban guide app for the 10 most popular cities. Here we see in the picture the location of Manhattan, of the venues in Manhattan, New York. So in aggregate, the data includes more than 12,000 venues and visits of several tens of million users for 2 months. So they combine these logs with a measure of local social connectedness derived from online friendship networks at fine geographic levels, which allows to test how the same recommendation treatment performs in communities that differ in the social fabric. So these measures come from Meta, from Facebook, and is publicly available. So to estimate demand responses, they use a nested logic framework for differentiated products that comes from economics. So in a nutshell, each consumer selects the alternative that gives her the highest utility, where the utility of consumers depends on the alternative characteristics and specific contextual factors. Whether the particular alternative is recommended by the mobile application or as well as the sensitivity of consumers to change in these factors. So basically, the market shares derive from the aggregated outcome of individual consumer decisions, and the utility parameters can be inferred based on the functional form assumption. So it is worth mentioning that the diversification of recommendation introduces quasi-random shifts in which venues are recommended on a given day. We also account for time trends and fixed events and control for observables such as rating, reviews, promotions, hours, amenities, and so on. So this strategy helps isolate the incremental persuasion effect of being recommended and how it scales with social connectedness. So to address endogeneity in which venues are recommended, we construct an instrument from a deep learning embedding of user-generated reviews that places venue in the latent product characteristics place. So the motivation for the instrument is that it's related to whether an alternative is recommended by the mobile application, as alternatives that are more isolated have a higher likelihood of being included in a recommendation list because of the diversification process. So in order to learn numeric representations of restaurants of the alternative in the latent space and then estimate the corresponding distance of the various alternatives based on an angular distance metric, they consider all available user-generated reviews on each alternative, which is a venue, at each time period as a single document of the corpus and use a pre-trained deep learning model. Then they use the cosine distance to measure the isolation, the differentiation of each alternative in each market based on the numeric representations. So the results illustrate that, of course, recommendation increase demand. So being recommended raises the probability of an offline visit. Second, the interaction between recommendations and local social connectedness is positive and statistically strong, as you can see, indicating that recommendations are substantially more persuasive in communities with denser social ties. Interpreted economically, we can say that moving from a lower connected to higher connected area meaningfully increases the incremental effect of a recommendation of a visit. When we break out the recommendation types, the positive moderation by social connectedness appear for collaborative filtering styles, but not for content-based or novelty-driven recommendations. So this pattern is consistent with an in-group identification mechanism. So basically, when a recommendation explicitly reflects what similar others prefer, socially cohesive communities respond more strongly. So instrumental variables estimates reinforce the main results. So basically, placebo recommendation show no effect. And sensitivity analysis suggests that the moderation is not explained by data density, population or tourism flows, competition or external reputation shocks. So to conclude, the particle just finishing the practical takeaways to tailor recommendation to market connectedness. The finding also contribute to the improved forecasting by including social connectedness in forecasting models. And finally, when choosing where to expand or invest, we should treat connectedness as a free multiplier that makes the same algorithm more effective while maintaining privacy and fairness safeguards. Thank you.